Thank you, Hamish, and everybody else too. I know you guys have lots of things to do, so it's always a privilege when people come together. Now, before I say thank you for that, raise your hand if you're here just because there was pizza and beer. Okay, that's good. Be honest. I know not all of you are here just because of me, but thank you for pretending anyway. So it's really a pleasure to be here. I love talking about this particular topic. When people ask me to come and speak on customer success or whatever we call this, the age of the customer, I often answer by saying, do you want me to talk for 45 minutes or 4 days or anywhere in between? Because I can do any of the above. This one is a 45-minute thing. You guys would be thankful for that by the time it's over. But I'll share with you, kind of my vision of what's going on and why it matters and how did we get to this place. Because how we got to this place, I think, is really meaningful with regard to what the future looks like. So I'm going to practice public speaking 101, which is engage the audience. So right from the start, I want you guys to be engaged. So if you note the title of my presentation, Age of the Customer. So I want to ask this question. Is this the first age where we cared about customers? Now that's a rhetorical question, I think. I hope it is. Because we've always cared about customers, right? I mean, 20 years ago, did we want customers to be good references? I think so. Did we want customers to pay their bills? Last I checked, I think that was pretty important as well. So why do we call this the age of the customer? And this is the question I really want somebody to raise their hand and answer. What's changed? If we used to care about customers and today we care about customers, why are we calling this the age of the customer? What's changed? Yeah, there's a hand up.
Customers got a voice now instantly, or before they just not mind.
Yeah. Good answer. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
The funnel split. Before we were giving the message, now we have to listen to the message.
Good one. Yep.
The power is given to the customer now.
Yeah, if you didn't hear that, the power is given to the customer. Anybody else? Yeah. One more.
The customer defines what we do.
Indeed, they do. Yes, they used to be the tail at the end of the dog. Now we're the tail at the end of the dog, right? We're getting wagged. One more. Somebody else had their hand.
Social media is driving.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's low switching costs.
The bottom line is all of these things add up to one thing, and that is paying attention to your customers today is important because it pays off on the bottom line of your business. Our CEOs don't invest in things like customer success because it makes them feel good, because they want to be telling the truth when they say we love our customers. It's none of those things. CEOs don't invest in anything unless it delivers bottom line business value, because their responsibility is to the shareholders. Increase shareholder value. The only way you do that is by driving successful business results, successful revenue. So all of the things that were brought up and answer that question are things that I'll talk about. So let's talk about how we got here, this idea that we're in this age of the customer. So business transformations are not new. Major things have happened. Now, some of you weren't around when personal computers were invented. I was. I'd call that a pretty major transformation. Then some of you may have been around when the internet became a thing. Some of you think it was around forever, just like color TV. Not true. Somewhere along the way, mobile became pretty important. I think we all have a supercomputer in our pocket, right? So that's become part of what we do. Social it was brought up a couple times already in answer to my first question. Social is a really significant phenomenon in the world we live in. And today, customer is one of those things, right? So these are major transformations that happened in the technology industry in the last 30 or so years. The reason I want to talk about this is if you look at those ones that happened before the customer one of the interesting things when I look back is once upon a time, in every company in the world, there was a group of people that were known as the Internet Group. Those were the people who knew what www stood for. But seriously, it was such a new thing that there had to be a department that was focused on it. Guess what? There was a time when there was a mobile group trying to figure out, do we really need to optimize our website to fit on a mobile phone? Do we need to be able to allow customers to do transactions on mobile? There's still in many companies a social group trying to figure out how do you monitor social media and what do you do with all of that. For the most part, these things are no longer separate groups. None of our companies have an internet group. Why is that? Because the internet is part and parcel of everything that we do. And if it's not in your company's DNA, your company will not survive. The same is true for everything that's on this page, including customer. Today, the customer has become more and more important than they've ever been before. That's not going to change. It's only going to go further. And if customer centricity, customer obsession, customer success doesn't become part of your company's DNA, you will not survive. This is not optional. This is not a good thing to know about. This is something that has to be part of what our companies do. One of my slides later on will say, if customer success remains a department, you will fail. It's not a department. Customer obsession is something that we have to build into our DNA. It may start with a department, and there may always be a group of people called customer success managers, but that can't be the end result. It's got to be something that is no longer a group. 5 years from now, customer success is part of every single planning cycle that we do, whether that's for product or finance or IPO or acquisition or whatever it might be. It has to be part of everything that we do. This is an interesting way to look at it, right? We've moved from a world where it was all about product to today where it's all about service, or as we call it, as a service. So if you look at the product era, not that long ago, we lived in a world where demand exceeded supply, right? There was a much bigger demand than there was supply for our products. And most of the world's lived in that kind of situation for a long time. If that's the situation, you focus on the supply chain, you refine your supply chain and your manufacturing cycles. We did something called Six Sigma. It was a really big deal back in the 80s and 90s. The internet came along and changed everything, but we focused on systems of record. Our ERP systems, SAP, Oracle, whoever it might be, those were the systems that really mattered to us. And the predominant vendors were companies like Oracle, Cisco, Intel, SAP, etc., Microsoft. Also, in that age, B2B enabled B2C. There weren't a lot of B2C applications. In fact, early on, there weren't any at all, right? So what was happening in B2B actually enabled or empowered the B2C world that we live in today. And customer support was the thing we did after we sold a customer. That's not that long ago. A lot of companies still living in this world. A big chunk of SAP and Oracle, as an example, still a lot of traditional on-premise vendors still live in this world. So what's changed? Well, the answer, I did it again. The answer is everything. We live now in this as a service area, right? Product, platform as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, etc. So what's changed? Well, the answer is everything. Today, the scarce commodity in our world today is the customer. That's a 180-degree shift from what was going on before. Supply exceeds demand. There's more products than there are customers. That didn't used to be true. Secondly, that requires then a focus on the customer. When the scarce commodity is the customer, you have to start focusing on it, right? That's the age that we're living in. User experience now becomes really important, right? No longer Six Sigma, not refining our manufacturing processes, refining our user design. Cloud plus mobile today was internet. Now it's really cloud plus mobile, right? That's the way we think about everything from a technology standpoint. And now we're in the age of systems of engagement. It's not the ERP system anymore. Now it's a CRM system or a system like Gainsight or even a Zendesk, right? The systems that you're using to track your engagement with customers. Those are the core systems. ERP is no longer the center of that hub. CRM is. And I think that'll probably change too. The dominant vendors now are a different set of vendors. Microsoft is the same through a kind of magical transition that's happened in the last few years, but the other vendors are all different. Right? This is a really hard world. Technology is a really hard world to keep up with. I don't know, and I'm not here to bash any companies, I don't know where Oracle is on the Fortune 500 list today, and I don't know where they'll be 10 years from now, but I will bet everything I own that they will be lower on that list 10 years from now than they are today. It's not 100% guaranteed because they could turn something around, but it's really hard to keep up. Look at 10 years ago, were Salesforce, Amazon, or Apple on that list in the top 20 most valuable companies in the world? No way. Microsoft was. That's kind of a miracle that they're still there. But the vendors change, right? We're going to talk about disruption a little bit later. B2C now enables B2B. Now, who's in the B2B world? Who sells software or products for B2B? Is there anyone here who does that for B2C? The problem for us B2B vendors is that your users' design requirement is it just has to be as easy as Facebook on my phone, right? That's their expectation. Now, is that a lofty goal for a B2B vendor providing really complex B2B software? The answer is not just lofty, it's impossible. But we don't get a choice. So what our users expect, right? We're designing for people who grew up with Facebook accounts from the first day that they knew how to read. Their expectation is what it is. Doesn't matter what we wish it was, right? It puts a lot of pressure on us, but we have to live with that tension. And then customer success has become the thing. It's no longer just supporting a customer. We can't just answer the phone when there's a bug that they found. We actually have to get out there and be proactive. So this is a dramatic shift. This is truly seismic. Everything about our businesses have changed because of this movement to the age of the customer. There's a great article about 6 weeks ago in Forbes. Forbes is read by all CEOs in the world, so there's a good chance your CEOs read this article. And what I love about it is it talks about customer success, and it gets a quote from all of these companies, like the major technology companies in the world, not just those that were born in the cloud like Salesforce, but also SAP, Oracle, Microsoft. And I'll share some quotes from that particular article. Really, really meaningful. Your CEOs are being influenced by articles like this that are telling them that customer success is really important. Now, I'll just stop for a second and say, when I say customer success, I'm talking primarily about a philosophy, not an organization. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. You can fill in that blank with whatever words you want: customer obsession, customer focus, customer experience, client success, whatever you want. The point is, I'm talking about an obsession or a customer centricity, not a department of people. So the first quote that I'll pull out of that particular article is this one. Now, not that much of a surprise that Mark Benioff would say this. Born in the cloud, SaaS from day one, always talked about customers from the first day of Salesforce. But this is still a pretty bold statement for a CEO to make. Nothing is more important to Salesforce than customer success. That's a pretty big statement. That's a product-driven, sales and marketing-driven company that is saying customer success is the most important thing in their business. And that's why I believe being so committed to the customer is more important than it's ever been. This is a company, by the way, that's valued at $80 billion on the US stock market. It has 150,000 customers, right? This is not an insignificant company, even though they haven't been around as long as SAP, Oracle, and others, Microsoft. But that's a really significant statement. I'll do some more quotes. So everyone's talking about this. This is good news for all of us in this room who are interested in customer success or directly involved in it like I am. It's great that these companies are talking about it because this says that there's money to be made out there, right? Gartner and McKinsey and Forrester don't care about something unless there's money to be made, right? Gartner doesn't start talking about something unless they believe they can sell you some material or a subscription to get more information about whatever that is. So this is really meaningful, and I love Jeffrey Moore's quote. If you don't know Jeffrey Moore, he's the guy who wrote Crossing the Chasm, among several other books. But he says even a mid-sized manufacturing company should be doing customer success. So this customer obsession, customer focus isn't just for software companies, isn't just for SaaS companies, isn't just for technology companies. It's for everybody. And I think that's the wave that's happening. This idea of getting focused and centralized around your customer is becoming critical for all sorts of businesses. And by the way, every company in the world is becoming a technology company. As Mark Andreessen wrote about 5 years ago, software is eating the world, and it absolutely is. Okay, so customer success, what is it? Is it a department? Is it a philosophy? Is it a discipline? Is it a movement? The answer, of course, is all of the above. Yes, that's right. So I think it's important to understand that, because when I say those words, what am I talking about? Well, I've told you already, I'm essentially talking about the philosophy. But just remember that when someone says those words, it could mean a lot of different things. So instead of assuming that you know what it means, it's a good time to engage in a conversation. What do you mean when you say customer success? What are you talking about? What it really means is simply this: customer obsession, right? Are you obsessed around making sure your customers are getting what they bought from you, what you promised them? So here's a quote from Oracle. Now, I don't know if anyone in this room has ever seen a quote from Oracle talking about how important customers are. I'm sure that's happened in the past, but most of us would typically laugh at that. I think they're serious about it. I know the people at Oracle who run customer success, they're dead serious about it. They've done a ton of acquisitions that are SaaS companies, so they've inherited a bunch of customer success people. This is their EVP of product, Steve Miranda, saying we've introduced brand new roles like customer success managers, because when the customer gets the software now, we're really incented, and we work with our customers to get them live and successful. These are not words that Oracle people, Oracle executives have said in the past. This is a dramatic change. So here's an important note. Customer success is bigger than customer success management. And I've been kind of making this point all along, right? Customer success, if you read the book or find the 10 Laws of Customer Success that we wrote several years ago, customer success law number 1 is it's a top-down company-wide commitment. It has to be. And I think that's the slide I put that on. Yeah, if it remains a department, you will fail. Customer success can't be that department over on the corner of the org chart where everyone says, well, don't worry, our customer success team will take care of that. I'll tell you a story. When I joined Marketo, first 2 days I spent basically getting introduced to some of the key people around Marketo, the other executives. So the first day I probably met 7 or 8 VPs. Every single one of them shook my hand, looked me in the eye and said, Dan, I'm so glad you're here. So glad you're here. I'm like, at the end of the day going, people read my LinkedIn profile, they know who I am, they really, really want me to be at Marketo. Well, the next day, going through the same process, meeting several more people, and every single one of them shook my hand and said, Dan, we're really glad that you're here. And somewhere along that day, I said, you know what, I don't think I'm quite that important. And the light bulb came upon me, and I said, you know what they're really saying is, I'm so glad you're here, because I have a pile of you know what on my desk that I'm going to walk over and put on your desk, right? Because guess what? In the absence of a customer success team, lots of other people had to do that job, whether it was product people or support people or professional services people or whoever else. Somebody had to do it. Somebody had to respond to that customer who had a renewal coming up who was saying, I don't think I'm going to renew my contract. So lots of other people had to do that job. That's why everyone was so happy that I was at Marketo, because I was the dumping ground, not because they thought I was something special. Some of you probably feel the same way. I'm often asked to define customer success. I use this slide a lot. And this is pretty simple. The top line of this slide is all of the functionality of all of your products put together. So if you have lots of products, that top line represents all of the capability of all of your products and all of your services together. The bottom line is how do your customers actually use that product or all of those products? And there's always a gap, right? Because none of us have customers who are using every possible capability of our products. We just don't make products that way. It doesn't work. So it leaves this thing we call a consumption gap. So I use this chart to illustrate what is customer success's job. Customer success's job, pretty easy, is to take this line and push it towards that line, right? Close that gap means customers are using more of your product, getting more value, more likely to renew, more likely to buy more. Here's where the tension comes in. What's your product team's job? Right? That's your product team's job. By the way, if you ever work at a company that doesn't have a consumption gap, find another company, because it means you're not innovating. It's a really bad thing. If those two lines are together, it's a really bad thing. There's no innovation going on. I have customers come to me all the time and they say this, geez, I wish you guys would go a couple quarters without doing a release so that I could catch up. And what they want from me is sympathy for that statement. So I try to put on a kind of sad face and say, gosh, I'm really sorry that we're innovating and making our products so much better every day. I don't mean that. I love that. I want my customers to aspire. Excuse me, I want them to aspire to keep up with us. And I don't ever want them to be able to catch up to us. So we want this gap. So if you ever need to explain customer success to someone, it's a simple way. Now it's a little bit oversimplified, and I'll talk some more about that later, because this focuses only on the kind of post-sales part of the equation. But we'll get to that later. Here's an equation we use, because there's a lot of confusion. This thing called customer experience has been around for a long time. Voice of the customer, especially big in B2C early on, still a pretty big deal. But here's the equation. Customer success is the combination of two things, and two things only. Does the customer get the outcomes for which they bought your product? And do they have a good experience with you as a vendor? That's it. Those two things together deliver customer success. Now, you can be successful with one of those and not the other, but you can't be wildly successful unless you do both of them. At some point, both of these things become important. In fact, one of my prospects said they thought that plus sign should be a multiplication symbol. And that's hard to argue with, because I think the whole equation might go to zero if either thing on the right-hand side is zero. So keep that in mind. This is what makes a customer successful. Are they getting a good experience with you? Are your invoices correct? Do you answer the phone when they call, whatever those things are? And secondly, maybe most importantly, are they getting the outcomes? In fact, early on as a company, the outcomes are probably more important than the experience. And I say it this way: if I build a machine that I sell to you, and you put a $1 bill in, and a $10 bill comes out, you're not going to care very much whether your invoice is correct. You're going to be too busy trying to find dollar bills to put in that machine, right? By the way, this is the promise of all of our software. Pay me $1 million because it's worth $10 million. I guarantee you'll get a $10 million ROI on it, right? So the outcomes are really important, but over time, we all get commoditized. Competition comes in, differentiation is harder. Now the experience starts to become really important. So keep that equation in mind if you're explaining this. And then, of course, you always have to have a 2x2 chart if you're doing any kind of consulting. And if you have CX and CO correct, then you get into the upper right-hand quadrant, and all things are rosy. And if you don't do that, then you have work to do. So here's Bill McDermott, CEO at SAP. Here's the most important line in this statement. He's talking about customer success, and it says, customer success is the most important priority. But here's the one that got me. Reflected heavily in the compensation for the sales rep. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever done business with SAP or knows that company at all, but the comp plan for their sales reps is a sacred document, blessed by the CEO, drives everything in the whole business because it's a sales-driven company. If they're saying that customer success is going to be reflected in the comp plan for their sales reps, they're saying the world has turned upside down, right? Upside down. And by the way, he says the whole management value chain, meaning the executive bonus pool, is also going to have a customer success element. It's hard to describe how big of a shift this is for a company like SAP. Really, really big deal. So here we are. We talked about disruption earlier. This came up when I asked my question, why is customer so important these days? One is because customers have way more choices. It's much easier to build a company. There's lots of competition. Our customers have choices. They also have voices, right? If you don't believe that, ask United Airlines how it works when people have a fight and somebody decides to tweet it, right? Our customers have voices and they're not afraid to use them. And by the way, it doesn't matter how big the customer is. The little tiny customer who decides to start tweeting about how bad your service is going to get a lot of attention. So a lot of voices, more choices, and we put them on a subscription, and all of this increases risk, right? This is a tension that we have to live with. As vendors, the risk is much, much higher than it's ever been. It's a much harder job. Running a subscription-based company is much harder than running the old school companies. This is not a great slide, but I saw this the other day and I thought I'd include it. The point of this slide is that technology is not a disruptor. Technology enables disruption. Disruption happens because a company is not focused enough on their customers. So the bottom line of this says technology by itself is not the disruptor. Not being customer-centric is the biggest threat to any business. I'll just pick one of those out. Apple did not kill the music industry. Us being forced to buy full-length albums killed the music industry, right? Jeff Bezos is big on customer obsession. I like to say it this way. If you are customer obsessed, you will not be disrupted. You will not be disrupted because you will always be agile and responding to the needs of your customers, and that can't be disrupted. If you do the old school thing, if you're a taxi company and you're still charging high fares and taking people on the wrong route so that it takes longer so they can collect more and making them pay cash and pretending your credit card machine doesn't work and your cab's dirty and on, guess what? It's pretty easy to say, I think I'll do an Uber, right? It was right for disruption. Uber is not a technology company. Anyone can build a mobile app that does GPS and tells where a car is and how far it is to your destination. It's the gap that was left by the taxi companies that created the room for that disruption. So welcome to the age of the customer. We used to have customers that were basically trapped, right? They bought our product and it took 3 years to implement and they paid $10 million and it took 27 people from Accenture, 9 weeks or 9 months, probably more like it. And they end up trapped because you can't switch once you put that much time and effort and money into it. By the way, there was a time when if you bought software, you also had to buy mainframe hardware and you had to build data centers. And then you had to air cool those data centers and you had to hire people to manage data centers and. And by the time we'd roll out our software, we'd be 4 years and $12 million into it. So guess what? In that situation, we're rolling out our software after $10 million in 3.5 years of effort. And one of the users looks at the screen and says, oh, this UI is awful. And we had a really easy solution to that problem. You're fired. You don't get to complain about it because we're stuck with this thing for the next 10 years, whether we like it or not, right? That's the on-prem software world still. Today, it's very different, obviously, when customers say jump, we say how high. Let's talk about this, whether customer success is here to stay. So what's really driving all of this need to obsess about customers is changing business models. We used to have this world where it was all about logistics and distribution. That's kind of the old school way. Then we went into this world, which probably many of you have lived in, which is this funnel-based idea. We talked about the funnel a little bit earlier, where everything was about the funnel, right? The pipeline, how many leads can we get in, how high can our conversion rate be? That's all that matters is driving acquisition of new customers. And then after they're a customer, if they call us, we'll answer the phone. But that's all we do, right? Well, in the early 2000s, when Benioff decided that we could do business over the web, software over the web, software as a service, we turned into this, which we call the funnel. No, sorry, not the funnel, but the hourglass, where the bottom part of that is just as big, if not bigger than the top part of it. And this is where customer success was birthed. Because now, for the first time, we actually had to pay attention to our customers. In the previous models, customer would pay us when we closed the deal. If you were selling Oracle, customer would pay you $3 million, you put that money in the bank at the time of the deal. And so if the customer didn't use your product, ask yourself this question: how much do I really care? All of your money is already in my bank account. Now, back to my earlier point, we do care. We wanted customers to be successful and referenceable and all that, but it wasn't a business imperative. Now it is, because we only collect 10% or less of the lifetime value from the customer up front. We got to earn the rest of it. If in that old school, call it that $3 million deal I talked about with Oracle, today you get 300,000 of that up front. You got to earn the other 2.7 million over the next 5, 6, 7 years. That's a pretty big incentive to take care of that customer, make sure they renew, make sure they buy more. Now, what does the future look like? I think it looks like this, probably. We're already here in many cases, the consumption economy. And what I mean by the consumption economy is you don't pay me subscription anymore. You pay me for how much you use my product. So here's a simple example to make it real. Many people use Box or Dropbox, right? You're usually paying a subscription X number of dollars a month. What if there was no subscription, but you got charged a penny every time you downloaded a file, a penny every time you uploaded a file, a penny every time you shared a file? That's the consumption model. You pay me only if you're using my product, right? What happens when this happens? The sales part of the business becomes way less important. Just like it has in the subscription world, we don't collect all that money up front. Most of it's earned by delivering customer success, not by being good at sales, by being good at delivering value. This takes it up another notch. Because now in this world, I might not charge you anything at all up front. Nothing at all. You don't pay me a penny until the first time you click in my software. So now we've really diminished the sales part of the process, and the post-sales or after the initial sale part of the process becomes everything. Everything. Guess who's talking about this? The CFO at Microsoft. Amy Hood is her name. She says, in a consumption-based business, customer success is all that matters. That's a sales-driven culture at Microsoft. Customer success is all that matters. In their Azure business, which is a consumption-based business, customer success is all that matters. Are we delivering value? Are customers buying more from us? So we're moving through this cycle where sales, the sales part of the process is becoming less and less important. In an outcome-based economy, which means you don't pay me a subscription, you don't pay me for clicking in my software, you pay me only when I deliver the outcome I promised. If I sell you my software and I say, we'll reduce your churn by 10 points, you don't pay me a penny until you get 10 points of churn reduction. And then maybe you pay me 40% of 11, 12, and 13 points. So this model, again, takes that sales part of the process down even further. And the bottom line is this: every one of these business model changes has heightened the need and the value of customer obsession, or what we call customer success. And this is causing major power shifts. Right? We've already shifted the power from the vendor to the customer, big time, right? As I said before, a customer used to have to buy software, buy mainframes, build data centers, pay for implementation. That would take multiple years in some cases, all of that investment up front. Today, customer doesn't buy our software, they lease it. They don't buy hardware, they don't even know what a data center looks like. Because guess who takes all of the risk? The vendor. Because we buy the data center from Azure or from Amazon Web Services or Rackspace or Google or whoever it might be, right? The data centers are all consolidating into 3 or 4 companies who own all of the data centers in the world. And so this shift has happened already. The power has shifted from vendor to customer. Because not only do they not have to pay for everything like they used to, but then we go and put them on a subscription. So every 12 months, they can look at us and go, I don't think so. Thanks anyway. Sheeman, talk about putting yourself in a tough spot, right? But that's the reality. So the power shifted from vendor to customer inside of our companies, and this is what I was just talking about. The power has shifted from sales to customer success, or sales to retention, or sales to post-sales, however you want to say that. This is not something that was done because some person came in and said, I want more power. This is because the business models have shifted, right? More of the business is coming from your install base. In fact, Salesforce is the most mature SaaS company in the world. This year, they'll do about $12 billion of business. 10 billion of that 12 billion will come from their install base in the form of renewal and upsell. So more than 80% of their business comes from their existing customers. In fact, here's the bar for all of us that are doing recurring revenue. This is Salesforce. If Salesforce never sold another new customer, what does their business look like? $10 billion a year this year. Next year, 13 billion. Next year, 16.5 billion. Next year, 20 billion. Without ever adding a new customer. That's one of the 10 best businesses in the world that doesn't even have to sell a new customer. It's amazing, right? This is why Salesforce is worth $80 billion on the US stock market, and the last time they turned a profit was 5.5 years ago. Because nobody cares about profit. They care about building that install base that has this recurring revenue that's growing year over year. So the expectation for all of us is that our install base, if that was a separate company, has to be a growing entity. It can't be shrinking. It doesn't mean you can't have any churn, but you have to make up for it by selling more, getting more value, getting more dollar monetary value for their customers. So both of these shifts are really dramatic. So just a little bit on metrics. This is kind of a little history of what's happened in the customer success world. Early on, every company that formed a customer success team did it because they had a churn problem. This was true at Salesforce when they formed the first customer success team. It was true at Marketo when I was there 7 to 8 years ago. all of the early SaaS companies got blindsided. They thought they had created a great product, which many of them did. What they didn't realize is that without somebody helping the customer, customers will naturally move towards churn. Because people don't like change. They don't naturally adopt new things as a whole. Some people do, but most don't. So early on, it was all about churn. And then it's evolved now, so most companies don't have a churn problem, but they're thinking about customer success as a driver of expansion. Can we sell more? Can we build more modules? Can we sell more licenses? Those kinds of things. Yeah, okay. My time's running, so expansion. The next one is kind of interesting. Customer success as a driver of acquisition of new customers. Now, when you first hear that, you say, that doesn't make any sense. Customer success doesn't affect the sales process, or does it? It does, and here's why. Because your prospects are talking to your customers, whether you know about it or like it. This is happening, and it's happening for one very simple reason. A small little company called LinkedIn. So if you guys were in a sales process with Gainsight as an example, it would probably take, anyone in this room would probably take no more than 10 minutes for you to find somebody you know who works at a customer of ours. And you send them a note and say, what do you think about working with Gainsight? Do they do what they said they were going to do? Does the product work? Would you buy it from them again? These conversations are happening all of the time. And they either accelerate or decelerate every single sales cycle that they have. So your reference program is antiquated. It's not, there's not no value in it, because there's still some value, but the most valuable references are back channel references to people we know. And LinkedIn and our social media enables that. Same thing is true, by the way, when you're interviewing somebody. If I'm interviewing you for a job and you provide me your references, that's great. I might call one of them. I might want to talk to your mom about how great of a person you are. Much more likely is me going to LinkedIn and saying, who do I know that knows that person? And just say, would you hire them again? Do you like working with them? Did they deliver on what they said they would do? So we live in this social media world, this connected world. So our prospects are talking to our customers. And if you don't think that's happening, I'm here to tell you you're wrong. So this is Workday's CEO talking about this idea, this network effect, because companies are talking to each other, and not just Fortune 500. He says that, but it's clearly not just Fortune 500. So staying very focused on customers and customer success. The last one is an interesting one, customer success as a driver of pricing. So here's the world most of us live in, where our product value, in theory, is really quite high. This is the way we sell our products. They're worth this much money, and all we're going to do is charge you this much, right? So our product value is really high. Our price is down here somewhere, and usually uncomfortably close to the actual price is the value customers are getting. So every CEO in the world knows that the easiest way to make more money is simply to raise prices, right? Immediate return on that. However, if you look at this chart, and this is representative of most of our companies, if you want to raise prices, what's the thing that you have to do before that? You have to raise customer value, right? Because you can't have these two things be the same, or worse yet, have the price be higher than the value customers are getting. That doesn't work. So if you want to raise prices, you got to increase customer value. This is why, how many use Slack or know about Slack? Fastest growing technology company in history by every single measure. Slack has a customer success team. Now Slack is a viral product, right? I start using it, pretty soon everybody's using it. So why do they have customer success? This is why. Because they want to charge more for their products. So they don't want you just to communicate with one person. They want you to communicate in groups and share documents and whatever else you can do with it so that you get more value so that they can raise the prices. So customer success is required at Slack for exactly that reason. Here's the CEO of a company called ServiceNow. Probably, if you haven't heard of them, they're the second/third largest SaaS company in the world. Workday and ServiceNow are about the same, trailing Salesforce. And John Donahoe says we're going to put more focus on customer success. And then he says what I was just talking about. This helps us on upsell, on price realization, which is a nice spinny way for a CEO to say we'd like to raise your prices, and on landing new accounts, what I also talked about, right? The acquisition part of the process. So for most of us, your focus changes as you mature. May start with churn. There's nothing wrong with that, focusing on churn. but then you'll move towards expansion and upsell, and then you'll start thinking about acquisition and pricing. And this is quite measurable, actually, the difference between being good at customer success and kind of being at the beginning stage of customer success has real clear monetary value. Your net retention numbers are, what is that, 32 points different. For all of us, no matter how small our overall revenue is, that's a really big number, 32 points difference. Okay, let me get through the rest of this quickly. There's not much left. So this is a comment from me. In the age of the customer, you can no longer acquire your way to success. Acquiring new customers is not enough. Used to be enough. Used to be the only thing that mattered. Right, in an Oracle business plan 20 years ago, the word retention didn't exist in that business plan. It said, our price is $3 million. We need 3,000 customers this quarter to pay us $3 million. Next quarter, we need 3,500. Next quarter after that, we need 4,500, et cetera, right? That's the only driver of the business, of the business metrics. Today, retention is part of that equation. So you can no longer just acquire new customers. You have to make sure existing customers are staying with you and hopefully buying more as well. And here's why, because acquisition is expensive. Acquiring new customers is really expensive. This is the latest that I've seen. The cost of acquiring $1 of recurring revenue is $1.18. What that means is it takes more than a year as a customer to recover the cost of acquiring that customer. So if all of our customers churn at the end of the year, that's a guaranteed we're soon to be out of business strategy because it cost us more to acquire than we got back in the first year. But the cost of retaining and expanding customers is not nearly as high. It's an order of magnitude lower. So this is research done by a group called Pacific Crest. It says the cost of expanding a customer, $1 worth of ARR costs 14 cents, and the cost of renewing a client, $1 worth of that client is 9 cents, as opposed to $1.18. So what this leads to is a future where CEO says to execs, I need $20 million more of revenue next year. How can we do that? One guy in the room will always raise their hand when that challenge is put up, and that's the VP of sales. You need 20 million, very simply. I need $17 million in marketing, and I need 35 new salespeople. Dead serious, and he'll make that number. That's the way it works. What I want in that room when that question comes up is the VP of customer success to raise their hand and say, I need 7 people and $500,000, and I'll deliver that 20 million because I can get it out of our install base. Now, if both of those statements are true, who are you going to choose? The guy who wants 35 people and 17 million, or the guy who wants, 5 or 6 people? So this is really important, especially as your install base grows. It's a gold mine, and it's much, much less expensive to pull more dollars out of your install base. In the age of the customer, net retention is the most important metric in your business. I think this is close to my last slide. So if you don't know what net retention is, I'll explain it to you quickly. So any given time period, as a recurring revenue business, you start with a certain dollar worth of contracts, basically. So call it $1 million. Let's say at the beginning of this quarter, we have $1 million in total, all contracts across all customers. Now, some bad things are going to happen, almost certainly in any given time period. Customers will churn, it's just inevitable. And some customers will not churn, but their contracts will get smaller. Yeah, I bought 200 licenses, I'm only using 41 of them. Here's 150 of them back, right? That's what happens. So contract value goes down. Also, good things happen, upsell and cross-sell. Some people separate those. Mostly that falls under this idea of expansion. So bad things happen, good things happen. Hopefully the good things outweigh the bad things. And you end up in this particular case with a net retention of 111%. So the starting point might have been 100 customers. The ending point might only be 90 customers, but the 90 are worth more than the 100 were a year ago or a quarter ago, whatever it is. That's net retention. If your net retention as a company is less than 100%, then you're going to go out of business. Period, end of sentence. The bottom of your bucket is leakier than what's dripping into the top. You can't sustain that. It just won't work. So world-class is 120 to 130%. 111 is actually pretty good. I just made these numbers up, but that's pretty good. And this is kind of what the chart looks like over time. Acquisition is important because that's the only way you make any money, but over time, way more of your business comes from your install base, then comes from acquisition. And so ultimately, our org chart will never look this way, but we need to think this way. And that is customer is central to everything that we do. And really good customer success teams put a lot of pressure on all of the other organizations in the company because you cannot do it alone. The product has to get better. The sales process has to get better. You got to sell to the right customers. You got to set expectations properly. You got to transfer that knowledge over so that we're not blind about what's going on with that customer, et cetera. Every part of the business has to get better for customer success to work. And this is a company orchestrating customer journey and everybody working together. And this does happen. There's big companies that are doing this. Whether you are or not, I don't know, but you have to start figuring this out. You have to get serious about what is that customer journey and are we delivering what we promised. Last slide. Your customers are your growth engine. Now, if you're a brand new company and you've only got 8 customers, that's less true than somebody who has a lot more. But over time, and you need to start thinking about it from day one, are we building a product in a way that customers can buy more over time, whether it's licenses or modules? Are we delivering what we're promising that we would deliver? Does the demo actually reflect how the product works? I'm fascinated by this. I just think this is funny. Back in the day, think about this. If acquiring new customers is the only business driver in your business, ask yourself this question. What's more important? What the demo looks like or how the product actually works? Guess what? What the demo looked like used to be more important than how the product actually worked. Because the only thing that mattered was acquiring new customers. And a really cool, slick demo, whether it's the way the product really worked or not, was really important. Today, the product better work the way that we demo it. Otherwise, we're setting our customers and our post-sales teams up for failure. Can't afford to do that. So customers are your new growth engine. Keep that in mind from day one, and I think you'll be successful. So I'll stop there. We can do questions for 15 minutes or so. I'm going to be around for a little while. So stop there and just ask if anybody has a question or comment or wants to move me out of the room or whatever the case might be.
Okay, so we've got a mic at the end. Oh, John, just yell out questions.
I'll repeat it if it's too quiet.
You mentioned there, it's like, I think there are 3 or 4 or 5 business models. The ones I'm thinking about, there was the subscription,
Yep.
There was the consumption, and there was the outcome.
Yep.
Have you got any examples within the sort of tech, especially B2B space, or outcome-based businesses?
Yeah, it's pretty rare. Question is, what about outcome-based businesses? Are there really any of those? It's pretty rare, and here's one of the reasons. By the way, this is going to be a roadblock to a consumption-based model too, because CFOs hate those models because they're not predictable. If I sell you my software, let's say I don't collect anything, but you're going to pay me a penny every time you click, there's no way for you to tell your CFO how much that's going to cost, and your CFOs will absolutely hate that, even though it might be the best thing for the business. Same is true for outcome-based, right? Like, how do we know how much we're going to have to pay if I sell you my software and say, we'll reduce your churn by 10%, the first 10 points don't cost you anything, but after that you owe us 50% of all the additional money you're making? That's unpredictable from the CFO standpoint. So this is pretty rare, but there are companies that do it. I don't know if anybody knows a company called Service Source. Service Source basically outsources the renewal process. And what they do is they guarantee their customers that they will improve renewal rate by X% by having a better process and better people and better technology to do that. And so that's what's written in the contract. So they get paid based on the outcome. As I said, it's pretty rare. And I'm not here to say that's definitely the future. But what I'm trying to say by talking about that is that whatever that next business model is, the bar for customer success is going to go up, not down. It's going to keep going up. Other questions?
Dan, that's the difference between an outcome model and a gain share model. They're 2 different things, though, aren't they? So one's you're using the product, and the more you use of it, the more you pay. A gain share model, which is more common and is used now by organisations, where you share in the benefit of the use of the product.
Yeah, I mean, what you're calling gain share is what I would call outcome-based. where you're sharing in the results that you've promised with your customers. Now you could either share in that, or it could be completely, the whole contract could be based on you getting those outcomes and sharing the profit of those outcomes with me. So I think we're synonymously using the word gain share and outcomes in your lingo. Yeah, in the back.
Do you use any different or new metrics for these measures, like the reverse churn, growth, and use?
Yeah, I think the answer to that has to be yes. There are new business models. Everything's turned upside down, including finance. By the way, there's no accounting standards in the SaaS world. So when a public SaaS company says our net retention is 127%, you have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. In fact, I love this joke. The CEO says to the CFO, "What's our retention rate?" And the CFO says, "What would you like it to be?" And that's a legitimate answer because I can calculate it any way I want to. There's no accounting standards. So net retention is a new one. What I think is maybe more important is net retention is the outcome we want. It's like, did we sell anything? What's the outcome of a sales organization? How much did we sell? But we have to measure things earlier on in the cycle to tell us whether we're going to get that outcome we want. So in the customer success world, that key measurement is what we call health score, right? Create a health score. Well, I'll say it this way. Every one of your customers has a health score. The question is, do you know what it is or not? Every one of them has a health score. So health score is the proxy for the results that we want, which is renewal and upsell, i.e. net retention. Just like pipeline for a sales organization is the proxy that tells them whether they're going to get the results that we want. Is the pipeline moving? Is it growing, right? So that's one. I think a lot of people have adoption metrics because so much of the health score is really, are they using my product and how much are they using? Which features are they using? Do they use them every day, et cetera? So there's kind of a whole series of metrics that are really designed to be leading indicators for that result that we're looking for. So I think net retention is one of those results. Logo retention, it's not just dollar retention, it's also logo retention. What are our churn rates? What are our churn rates by cohort? We used to not care that much about cohorts because we treated them all the same. Today, cohorts are really, really important. Like, is the cohort of customers we signed in January of last year doing better than the cohort of customers we signed in January of the year before? Because we changed a lot of things. Are they using the product more? Are they retaining at a higher rate? Is a higher percentage of them have bought more from us, et cetera, right? So cohort analysis has become kind of a big deal. It used to not be a big deal at all. So that's a few things that I see as kind of different metrics. Yeah.
Loved your presentation, Dan.
Thank you.
And it was learned a lot. Haven't had the privilege of reading your book yet. Is all this covered in it?
No.
Okay.
The book was 3 years ago. Someone asked me, would you do anything differently? And the answer is pretty much every word. I said it 6 weeks after I finished it. I said, well, gosh, I'd redo 3 chapters. And writing a book is a really funny process. I'll just share this with you. It's really cool to say you're going to write a book. It's really cool to say you wrote a book. In between, not cool. It's hard work. It's really hard work. So the answer is a lot of this is covered at a high level, not in the specifics, but everything's changed. Our editor won't let us write a sequel because he feels like it would cannibalize this book that continues to sell more year over year. It's kind of a weird situation. But I have the table of contents mapped out for the next book. And it's a lot of this kind of stuff, because this has changed. A lot of the stuff has changed. 3 years is a long time in the technology industry. The reason the book is relevant, though, is because we wrote it for CEOs. So I wrote the book for your CEO, not for you. There's no how-to in there. It's not how do you do customer success. It's why it matters. These kinds of things. So a lot of the philosophy that I put in here is in the book. But get one and put it on your CEO's desk. Yeah.
I really loved how you talk about this as a philosophy more than a department. But what I was wondering is people who do not have a business background, do not have a marketing background, do not care about sales, i.e. product engineers, people who are responsible for other parts of the business. Customer success, to me, it feels like they should kind of be buying in on this. But how do you talk to them about it, be compassionate, as a fundamental kind of click moment so that they actually do that in their day-to-day?
Josh is smiling because I'm going to try to do this tomorrow morning for the PushPay engineering team. So the question was, how do you talk about customer success to product people, basically engineers? One thing I would say to product folks is this: if you build a perfect product, then I won't exist anymore because we won't need customer success, right? Because a perfect product won't have any bugs in it. It will install itself. It will train the customer how to use it, and it will spit out an ROI every 10 minutes. And you just saved another $11 million by using my product, right? Guess what? That's never going to happen. Because if perfect products solve problems, we wouldn't have customer support, and customer support has been around forever. So I think step number one is you have to get people to acknowledge that we're building complex software, and it doesn't teach our customers how to use it. We need somebody to help the software. It's like, I think an example of this would be other things that are now getting built into your product, like little mini training modules that are in the product, or things like Pendo that guide, or User IQ, or some of those kinds of tools that guide customers through the use. Oh, I noticed you just did this. Most customers also then do this, that kind of a thing, right? So the engineering world can't be resistant to things that are clearly working. And oftentimes I'll talk to CEOs who will say, I don't think I need a customer success team. Our product's really good. It's pretty viral. The user experience is great. People kind of naturally adopt it. And I say, well, that may be true. But if you're telling me that you want to be a public company or a successful company, then you better be 100% sure that you're smarter than the combined CEOs of all of the public SaaS companies in the world, because they all have a customer success team. And it is highly unlikely that you have suddenly happened upon something magic that causes you to not need a customer success team. It's just not going to happen. So it's tricky because your customer support and customer success are kind of challenging product people a little bit. Like, we need to help you to build a product that customers can actually use. But I think the right engineering mentality will embrace that. Like, I'll show you a little better code. That's good, because I want my CSMs to not be showing someone which buttons to push, but let's have strategic conversations with senior level people about the overall value of the products. That's way better than teaching somebody which buttons to push to create that particular report. No magic there, but that's the way I'd go about it. But call me tomorrow afternoon and I'll tell you if the PushPay engineering team beat me up or not.
What's the main difference between inside sales and customer success?
Wow. Probably depends a little bit on what you mean by inside sales, but I mean, just dramatically different goals. Any organization that has the word sales associated with it, their goal is going to be to sell something to a customer, right? They're commercially driven. The vast majority of customer success teams in the world are not commercially driven. If I'm a customer success manager in most companies, my job is to become a trusted advisor to my customer. And they have to look at me as if every time they talk to me, I'm helping them, not asking them for something. The minute I say, yeah, this is great, you're getting a ton of value out of the product, I'm glad I could help you. By the way, we just announced another product, it's $49.95, would you like a demo? I can give you a 12% discount. You've lost all of your trusted advisor spend. It's very hard to do commercial and be a trusted advisor. So I think, not that salespeople can't be trusted, because ultimately customers buy from people they trust, but it's a different relationship when you're being commercial versus non-commercial. And customer success in general has commercial metrics that tell us whether we're doing it well. Net retention is a commercial metric, but it's not the mentality of a particular individual that I'm trying to sell something to the customer. I'm just trying to help them get more value out of my current product. Yeah.
Dan, is there a trend of people looking to put commercial targets on customer success teams? It's something that I start hearing from trends.
Yeah. Here's a 100% truth of life. That is, if you have people that are interacting with customers, at some point your CFO will say, I wonder if we could give them a quota. That's just going to happen. And so I think there's a litany now of companies who have decided that's not the right model. So I think the evidence says that that's probably not the best way to go. But it's always going to get tested. There's no company ever that didn't at some point say, well, let's try it, see what happens. And most of them have come back from that. So I think the evidence is pretty clear that that's probably not the right way to go. But a CFO and CEO always have the right to say, am I getting all the value I could out of any organization? And one of those values of a group of CSMs is, could we ask them to sell? Could we ask them to do the renewal? Right, there's gradients of this. We don't ask them to go look for new customers, but could they sell more licenses? Could they do the renewal? Could they convince the customer to pay 5% more than they did last year at renewal time, right? There's a number of gradients that you could try. And most companies try these at one point or another, but what I've seen is almost all those companies pull back from that and say, we don't want our CSMs being commercial at all. But more than likely, at some point, you'll try it, and your CFO will kind of insist on it.
So just do one last question in the middle here.
How do you find what the sales team and the customers that want to talk to them or the man to talk to the customer success team? How do you build that relationship to put them away from the sales process like that?
Yeah, the question is how do you get customers to move their loyalty or their relationship from the salesperson to the customer success person after they bought? There's some kind of hardline answers to this. One is, and I've done this at Marketo, we did this, salesperson, you sold this customer, do not respond to their email, do not respond to their voicemail. You are out of the picture. We own it, and we will deliver value to that customer or we won't be successful. That's one way to do it, and it's a legitimate way. It sounds really harsh, but salespeople are good at sales things, and customer success people ought to be good at customer success things. So let's have each of those people do the things they're good at. And salespeople shouldn't be doing escalations. Salespeople shouldn't be running around trying to figure out, are we going to fix this bug? Is this really a bug? How come the customer doesn't know how to use the product? That's just a really poor management model that says, let's have people doing things that they're not very good at, instead of the things that we're paying them to do. So that's kind of a harsh answer to the question. I think the real answer, which is a little bit cliche, is the customer success manager has to prove that they're valuable to the customer. And the minute they do that, that customer doesn't care who their salesperson was anymore. The reason they're going back to their salesperson is because they trusted them and they think they can help get something done, and they don't know yet that there's someone else who can do that. So you have to earn it. Just like you have to earn the trust of the salesperson so that they allow you into their accounts, right? That's kind of an old school way of thinking. But salespeople are control freaks if they're really good. They almost always are. And be like, nobody talks to my customer, including the CEO, without me knowing about it. So you'll have just as much trouble convincing your salespeople that it's okay for them to open the door and let you talk to customers. Now, at the end of the day, that's your job, so it doesn't matter ultimately what the salesperson says, but you do have to win them over too. Like, oh my gosh, I just got a really nice big upsell and I didn't have to do anything except get the contract signed because my CSM set the whole thing up. That's the last time that salesperson will ever say, call me before you talk to my customers. No, here's my list of customers. Please go talk to all of them, right? So it's all about making sure they get what they want out of it. Again, no magic wand there. It's a kind of a cliche answer, but it's really true. You just have to earn the right to be the person that your customer calls and to be the person that your salesperson and everyone else in your company trusts to go deal with that particular customer. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you. Appreciate it, you guys. It's really fun.